All right, today's video was directly inspired by Bethany's most recent video of she was talking about really low rated books, and they were books that she gave 5 stars. That's not quite what this video is, but I was directly inspired by seeing that in my timeline. I mean, granted, people do things with Goodreads stats all the time. We can't help but mine this weird website because it's like our biggest compilation of book data. I am going to go through my books that I read and the lowest 20 rated and see if I agree or if I disagree, and have whatever discussions come from that. And let's start with the ones that have the highest rated. And this actually works out for 3.5 average rating and lower, because that is when you start to be in like the lower end of rating. So I mean, I think my lowest rated book on Goodreads is a 3. I don't think I've actually ever read anything that was below a 3 average on Goodreads, thank goodness for me. So the first one we'll talk about is The City in the Middle of the Night. Wow, I read that a long time ago. I think I read that one back in like 2017, maybe 2016. When did I read that book? Oh, apparently 2019. Who knows? Does that make sense? Yes, it was before BookTube still. Wow. This book was okay. I gave it a 3 star. The internet gives it 3.5. That feels right. I feel in alignment. This had a lot of interesting ideas, but not enough character work for me to care, and it wasn't doing anything super unique to me. This is a tidal-locked planet. What that means is like one side's always dark, one side's always warm. And then you have a humanoid species, and then you have a non-humanoid species. And then you have this one character who can be like part of both worlds. And I don't really remember the plot. Yeah, it was very fine. It had not inspired me to read more Charlie Jane Anders. Let me just put it that way. Granted, feels unfair because I don't think this is actually her most liked one anyways, but you know, it is what it is. The next one's Elysium by Jennifer Marie Brissett. I actually really like this one. I gave it 4 stars. It has a 3.47. I think for how short it is, it's allowed to be as experimental as it is, and I just think the right audience who loves weird experimental things needs to find it. It's so cool. Like, it's really cool. I mean, it is, like, this author really does like playing with historical couples or historical myths and then really spicing them up to be like these near far future science fiction weird situations. Like, so imaginative to the point where sometimes I feel a little lost, but I still have fun exploring these worlds she created. And this one in particular, there is a story left in the atmosphere that is now a functional computer cloud, literally. And we are getting that story, but it's always being corrupted. So we keep getting these slightly different iterations of this story. It was really cool. I really liked it. It kind of gave me what I was hoping to get from The Emperor and the Endless Palace, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, having now read that. Like I said, I really like it. I get the writing style could be challenging, and especially that narrative framework is challenging. But it was so cool in only 200 pages. So I'm just like, if there is a time to do that type of experimental, fun exploration, that's cool. So I think it deserves a little higher, is really what I'm saying. The next one is Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I gave it 2 stars. It is a 3.45. Wow, I even wrote a review of this back in the day. I also read this in 2019. This is before I thought I could DNF books. My friends in real life were like, why are you still reading this book? They're like, you don't like it. Stop reading it. I'm like, but I have to finish it. It's the sunken cost fallacy or something like that. I like literary fiction. I like fantasy. I do not like this combination of the two. And probably part of that is the fantasy in this book are like really classic tropes that aren't actually why I read fantasy. I am not a chosen one girl, really. Like, I mean, if the chosen one's in the book, that's fine. Like, it doesn't turn me off from it. But if, like, that's the focus of, like, subverting the chosen one trope, that's not always my favorite thing. It was definitely a quest. There were, these mysterious evil things and creatures. Like, it pulled a lot from things that, like, already weren't working for me. Like, my biggest, like, shame is how much I don't like Tolkien as much as everyone else, right? Like, that's just how it is. Doesn't make me less of a fantasy lover, but it's kind of a little, it's not something I talk about very loudly. So a lot of its fantasy inspirations, even though the creatures themselves and the landscape was very African inspired, really felt like the types of Western tropes I don't vibe with. And in the writing style itself, it had this, and maybe I'd be better with it today because I've had more practice reading this type of style, but it was so fragmented and jumpy. Within one page, I couldn't tell if a week passed or 3 years. Like, that's the type of confusion I was dealing with when I was reading this book. And then, it's a very dark book. It's very dark. Lots of graphic trigger warnings, like on-page depictions of graphic things, which doesn't really bother me, but I just kept feeling like I was beaten over the head with, trauma after trauma, and things are bad. And then I finally have this little thing to hold on to that I like. This little thing in this book that I enjoy. And then it destroys it. And I'm like, why can't I have this one thing? So it was this, I think, a little gratuitously dark for me. And like I've talked about with other things, I don't mind dark, but I like there to be something for me to root for. Anything. Dark for the sake of dark doesn't work for me. And I'm not saying it shouldn't exist, but I can see how this didn't quite find its target audience, because like a 600-page lit fic book is already like, that's so long. Like, that's so long. 600 pages for a fantasy book, that's fine, but it doesn't read like your standard, writing style. Even Tolkien, all 3 of his books together is 900 pages, like, So yeah, maybe one day when the 3rd book's out, because it's like going to be from all these 3 perspectives telling the same story, I'll give it another shot now that I have more practice with some of the writing quirks that bothered me, but yeah. The next one is The Genesis of Misery. It has a 3.44. I gave it 2.5 stars. This is another one where, like, it was a big writing style problem for me. And also character disconnect. I remember this character's arc making 0 sense to me. Like, I could not make it make sense. This is one where Bethany actually likes this book quite a bit. I think even has a standalone review for it. But for me, I was just so like, wait, we just had this complete 180 and it's not actually explained by magic or science. You just completely changed how you think without explaining it to me, even though this book is me being in your head. And I think I can suspend a lot of disbelief when I read, but character motivation changes that dramatically like really make it rough for me. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I DNF'd The Familiar. It's like, your thoughts and your actions they're not meshing for me, and it's pulling me out of the story. So very cool world, very cool discussions about the role of religion and politics and things like that. But I was just having that character disconnect, and the writing style was tough for me. It was incredibly tough. The next one's The Circle, which I read in 2017 in like a day and a half. I remember this. It was one of those rare moments where I went to the bookstore, I bought a book, and I read it. all within the course of like 72 hours. This happened. Wonderful. It's objectively, I don't think it's actually a very good book. I gave it 4 stars because like, I read it and I enjoyed reading it. I even watched the really mediocre movie, which is worse than the book. I'm unsure. It's weird. It has Tom Hanks and Emma Watson trying an American accent in it. It's weird. I do not think it would hold up today. I am unsure. But it's, it's about the role of social media in one's life and how you can just be like sucked into the numbers of it all and how that disconnects you from reality. It's supposed to be like a weird spoof off of 1984. It's a page turner. I don't mind it for being a page turner. So I am kind of shocked that it's a 3.43. People really didn't like the book, which like, that's fine. I don't actually think it's that good. I just thought it was a page turner. Like it was truly the definition of like the airport read. Like I just wanted to be turning the pages. The prose wasn't very good. The character development wasn't very good. There's nothing about it that I consider great. But I kept turning the pages and I kept wanting to read it, which goes a long way for me and my rating scale. Next up's The Flowers for the Sea, which I gave 3 stars and it got 3.43. And this was a novella. It was a horror novella, sci-fi horror novella. And I'm struggling to remember a lot about it. And I think that's why I gave it a 3, because I felt like it was going to be fairly forgettable for me, which is rare. I don't actually forget that much. Like I'm talking to you about some books that I've read like half a decade or more ago. Let's see what I wrote in this review. Oh, I liked the strong writing style, apparently. When I wrote this review. That said, I already don't remember much of it, so it is one of those novellas that unfortunately won't stick with me. I probably wrote that review like days after I read this book. So, seems like a 3 average is reasonable. Oh, Docile. This got a 3.43. I think I gave it a 3.5. This one was a struggle too, because much like The Circle, I could not put it down. I just kept reading it and reading it and reading it, and the audiobook narrators were very good, although one of them is my favorite, and he was the bad guy. And I always struggle when my favorite is the bad guy. He's the voice of Kieran in Chorus of Dragons, and he is definitely not a good person in Docile. Docile's, oh man, I think it's not as bad as people say, but it did get stuck in the mud of it was marketed very poorly. I read it after the whole marketing thing, but I think originally was marketed, it was like before we even had romantasy, but it was marketed as kind of like this toxic enemies to lovers romance, and that is not what this is. Like, our main character is a sex slave, and it's not, the power dynamics all really bad. It's really not good. And it's a commentary about this civilization. Now, so the world building is going to have holes in it, because it's like kind of that classic dystopian, how did we end up here, and how is this even a functional society? So if you look at that world building for more than 10 minutes, it's crumbling. It's going to crumble. I don't need to look at dystopian world buildings that closely. It's a rare dystopian book that I feel like is actually like very grounded. So I just move on with it, right? And I liked the two characters, and I actually did like the end of it. It's just that, like, it's very uncomfortable. And it actually does have, like, erotic scenes in it. Now, this worked better for me than The Emperor in the Endless Palace, which also had, like, erotic, sexy scenes. But I think that's because this one never, in my head, while I was reading it, tried to be a love story. In my head, like, there were definitely infatuations, there was definitely emotional, like, connection, but, like, the book itself didn't feel like this is a romance. So, but yeah, it's tough, it's graphic. I couldn't put it down, but I also get why it gets a lot of criticism. Like, I get it. Celestial Bodies. Oh, I read this one a while ago. 2019, 3.41 stars average. I gave it 3. I think it was shortlisted or won the International Booker. I think it was one of those books where I really appreciated it, but I also had a lot of critiques about the narrative framework and just, like, what the purpose of the story is. Let's see if I can get this to open up more. Well, I might have lost my spot, but we'll get back. Let's see. I'm really glad I read this for my local book club because there's a lot to unpack here that I'm excited to discuss with them. I enjoyed exploring a history and a part of the world that I knew next to nothing about, but I wish that with that there would have been either a more cohesive plot or deep characters. So I guess I thought this was a little surface level for me. We get to explore the perspective of one character deeply, but all the characters I found interesting barely got time, and the minute I got invested, we switched to another scene, which could be a different character, place, and time. This book does not hold your hand, and the jumps between time can be hard to follow. I recommend this book if you're curious about the country Oman and the cultural changes that were occurring in the late 20th century to the early 21st. And it was apparently amazing for book club discussion. So I think that one, it makes sense that it's a 3.41 if it was a 3 for me. And I do remember it probably being between like a 3.5 or 4 at my book club. But yeah, I think it wasn't the content that was the issue, but it was the character focus. But I don't remember much about the plot at all. I do remember really enjoying the the setting and the place and just wishing I could sit in it, but I never got a chance to sit in it. Next up is Fireheart Tiger by Elliot de Bodard, who is someone I still should read more from, but I'm scared because I didn't really like this. I mean, I didn't hate it. It was a 3-star for me, and it's a 3.4 star average. Again, I am not a popular opinion girly. You can notice I've been pretty in line with the opinions of these ratings. I just wanted it to be longer. It wasn't bad, but this had that kind of a lot of jumping from decision to decision really quickly. And I was like, how did you as a character have buy-in so quickly to making this decision? I don't have buy-in, and I'm comfortably on my couch, not stressed out of my mind. So I think it moved a little quick for me, which is why I'm like kind of nervous about her other works, even though the covers are so pretty. I do need to give her another shot, but her writing style was also kind of hard for me to like sink into and be immersed in. The Perfect Nanny. I rated this much higher. Well, not much. I gave it 4 stars. It has a 3.39. And I can't remember if this is translated or not. Let's see. While reading, I was always excited to pick it up and continue the narrative. What stopped it from being a 5-star is the ending. So apparently I didn't like the ending. Can't remember it. This nanny definitely becomes a part of the family's life in a way that is uncomfortable. And it kind of has like psychological thriller vibes. So it kind of makes sense that I gave it 4 stars. I feel like the average psychological thriller thing that I read, I get 4 to 5 stars. Because I think there's something I like about it, but I don't read them often enough to be burnt out on some of the tropes. I have no idea why it's rated this low. I even think my book club generally liked it. Like, I don't remember it being, like, adored, but I don't remember it being hated. I remember the books we hate. This one wasn't one of the books we hated. So, yeah, I had a good time. It was unsettling. Like I said, I think the ending was just the only thing that didn't, like, work for me. And maybe the ending just really didn't work for a lot of people, but I can't even remember what was so rough about the ending. I have no clue. So I'd have to read it again, and I don't really love it enough to do that. Masters of Poisons. Oh, this book deserves more love. I gave it 4 stars. It gets a 3.36, which I don't think's fair. I truly don't. It's a lyrical standalone fantasy that does a lot of things that other lyrical standalone fantasies do that people like. The difference is that this is African-based. And I'm not saying that that's the reason, but I do think when we don't get to have our comfort zones, people are, on average, I'm saying people as a general public, not you as an individual. If you gave this book individually a low rating, I'm not judging you. But I'm generally just talking about our group aggregate. We are less patient when things we are uncomfortable with or don't understand. And I think that kind of happens with Masters of Poisons. Like, I'm not going to say it has super strong character work or anything like that, but I would say that about a lot of books that are stupid popular in the fantasy space. Like, I don't think it actually does something that astronomically worse compared to other books I would compare this to. Like, I would compare this to Tolkien. I would compare this to Grace of Kings. It's just a shorter version. It's a wonderful climate fantasy discussion. It's got this like weird whimsical dream world that doesn't make sense. People love that. So I don't actually know why this gets such a low rating other than people aren't patient with it. Which is, they're right. Because I don't even think it's that hard of a writing style. It's just a tiny bit distant. But like a distant third person is like classic in fantasy. And people always want to stand alone. So I don't know. This one's shocking to me. Just like Home by Sarah Gailey. I give 4 stars. It's got a 3.35. Is it the ending? It has to be the ending. Like, I did not love the ending, personally. But it only brought it down from like a 4.5 to a 4 or something like that. The sense of place and connection, like this is good haunted house stuff. She comes home, you know that her family has this issue, you kind of learn what happened with the family. The only thing I wished was how like the metaphorical physical monster stuff was like handled. But no, I mean, when I think about it, I think of how much fun I've had in that atmosphere and dread, the being home, and what does that do to a person who's been away from home for a while? And then when you turn in the sense of place, it was visceral. No, I mean, this is not my favorite Sarah Gailey. And I can definitely see critiques in the pacing of the ending and the reveals and when things maybe should have been revealed and how much time we should have spent on stuff. I totally get that. This is not a 3.35 star haunted house book. No. I disagree. Oh, well, this one I rate 1 star, so I definitely agree that it should be a low rating. This is Boy Snow Bird by Helen Oyeyemi. It gets a 3.35. This is just very transphobic. It's incredibly, incredibly transphobic. It's actually unfortunate because it's quite lovely to read until the ending. And this is an ending that ruined it for me. Like, Helen Oyeyemi's writing is beautiful. I love reading her writing. I kind of even loved the whole, like, what are we doing with kind of the Snow White fairy tale-ness of it all? She kind of plays with the magical realism in a way that you can tell she doesn't know what she's doing. She's not from America, and the way that she writes about race kind of shows. Like, she's a Black author, but she's not African-American, writing about race in Massachusetts in the mid-20th century, and totally doesn't get what would happen. Like, it would have been so much worse than what she wrote, I guess, because this is about a story about passing and things like that. And, like, all of that, even with its, slight inconsistencies, it's still a beautiful story. It's still, like, interesting. But the ending is so transphobic, I can't get past it, and I will now never read anything else by her, because it looks like it was intentional. Like, or at least, I don't think she has really grown from it. So if I read more of her works, I'm going to be put in uncomfortable spaces, because I've heard other reviews of other books and the queer representation and how it's handled. And I'm just like, as beautiful as your work is, I don't need to deal with that. But I hated this one with a fiery, fiery, fiery passion. That ending was not okay. The City Inside. This is another one where I'm just like, no, people love lit fit science fiction. And why this one doesn't get loved, I think is a little weird. So The City Inside is it's not dystopian, it's anti-dystopian, as in it's taking place 10 years from now in India. And it's like, really does remind me of like Fahrenheit 451 or 1984, but with our time, our now, our social media. It has a lot of emphasis on influencers and managing influencers. And our main character is just like the classic sci-fi dystopian character of like complicit, kind of wants to bucket, but not really. Like, that's classic. So the reason why this doesn't work is I think people are lazy. Like, that's what I think. Like, to be a 3.31, this is very well written. It has such a fun writing style. It wouldn't work for everyone, sure, but like, it is not bad writing by any means. And it's not that long. I loved the plot of this. Anyways, I don't know. This one, again, I really just disagree with. It's not like a 5-star for me, but I think people are being lazy because it's not like familiar to them. They can't insert themselves. I don't know. If you like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451, like, there's no reason that this should be at least, like, it could be like, those are 5-star reads, and this one's not quite as good. It's like a 4-star. To be a 3.31, people have to be like really hating this. And I'm just like, that's weird. That's very weird. And maybe the right audience wasn't picking it up. I don't know. But like, it was, I think, marketed appropriately. Like, it's a lit fic sci-fi dystopian. That is a solid genre that we've had for a while. Oh gosh, yeah, and this one always angers me. This was actually in Bethany's video. Goliath is a 5-star read for me. I read it twice within a month, and I almost DNF'd it the first time. So do I understand why it wouldn't work for people? Of course. 3.29 is, again, I'm just going to call it laziness. I'm just calling it laziness. And again, I'm talking about the group us as a people, not you as an individual. An individual's thought's okay. A group's thought is always madness. It's one of those things where it does not hold your hand, and it relies heavily on you being willing to explore, be introduced to cultural things that you're not familiar with to understand conversations. If you've never played spades before, there are 2 whole pages of this that make no sense to you, but if you have played spades, you're chuckling the entire time. And you're like, yeah, a card game like this is a classic community, gel. And it has these little rules, and it does cause these tensions, and it's just... Anyways, it's a beautiful, beautiful story that is framed so confusingly, but it's worth it, and the metaphor is there. It is hard. It is a hard book to read. So I do get when it's not a 5-star for other people, but I do think it's not given the patience that other authors are. And I think that's annoying to me because it's not a 3.29 star book. Like, it's not. It's a challenging book, sure. Maybe it should be a 3.5 or 3.6 on Goodreads, right? I'm not saying it should be like a 4.7. But a 3.29, I mean, like, that's where I'm just judging the populace as a whole, which I'm allowed to do because we know the populace as a whole, they don't like being uncomfortable. They don't like being exposed to things they don't understand. And to be fair, if you want to escape, Goliath is not an escapist book. That's fine. I don't think it was marketed as an escapist book. It's basically gentrification in reverse. So like Earth gets screwed up, like it's being right now. All the rich people get to go to space and live on, space stations. And then once Earth has healed enough for people to come back, meanwhile, people were left behind on Earth. The poor people, usually black, brown, Asian people, all of that. And so now these white people who are very rich come back to Earth and basically are gentrifying the cities that those people have worked so hard and been so sick to rebuild. That's what it's about. It's stunning because it's done in a way where like you actually do feel weird. It's like, well, I'm following this gentrifier, and then I'm following this community, and then all this, and you get like flashbacks into where we get to and how we even got here, and then you get the fallout, and the fallout hurts. It hurts so much. But then you have this beautiful metaphor about blueberry patches that I adore, and like how it combines with the seasons because it's broken into seasons, and like how fires can work to heal. It's not a 3.29. Okay? I have a standalone review. I love that book. I get why it's not for everyone. But, like, it would be one thing if all books like this were given 3.29 stars. And it's not. There are other books that are just as challenging, that are just, because they have certain names behind them and certain acclaim in, like, the dude bro sci-fi community, they get more patience. I don't care. Oh, Burnt Sugar, I do agree with them. We read this for book club, and we all hated it. It wasn't very good. I think there was some good bones here. And I get the link between smell and memory, which was a big part of it, but it just led to such like sensory uncomfortable moments for me. Like, I don't want to know what your vagina smells like. I don't know. It was just like, it's not even that I'm grossed out by it. It's just more like, what did that actually help me with this scene? Did you just write it because you're a lit fic author and shocking? I don't know. Sometimes this was a debut. It was shortlisted for the Booker. Nobody at my book club liked it, and we read a lot of Booker books. That's it. It's a 3.26, so I'm not alone. But I get the emphasis on smell and memory. I just think the execution wasn't that good. The story itself about a woman and her complicated relationship with her mother, who may or may not be going through Alzheimer's, I think the book makes it unclear because our main character, it's the classic unreliable female character situation. But, it wasn't bad. Like, I didn't mind the main character. She was a little, like I said, she was a little bit stereotypical in terms of like, oh no, we can't believe anything she's saying. Oh, she wants to be pregnant. She doesn't want to be pregnant. Her marriage is in shambles. I don't know. It's really hard sometimes to take an unreliable narrator super seriously. Like, sometimes it really works for me. But in this case, I was just like, okay. I think it made it hard for me to be invested in her because I didn't know if I believed her. And it was just weird. And I think that's part of it. Like, I think, like I said, there's good bones here. The full execution, I didn't like it. Womb City. Bethany and Rachel the Shades of Orange both like this. Bethany even brought this up in her video. So I will post both their reviews down below. They like it. I do not. I gave it 2 stars. It currently has a 3.2. For me, it didn't work out because I didn't like the main character's motivations at all, and I didn't actually understand why a certain part was put in. And I'm very sensitive to, like, the use of drug use in a book, and that was like kind of part of it. But also, even if I separate that, I'm not really like a fast-paced girl. So that was kind of a struggle for me. And I was just really bored. Like, I was excessively bored while reading the end of the book, even though things were happening left and right. So, like, if you like fast-paced books, you might like this. And it has an interesting combination of science fiction and horror, but I personally didn't like the execution of them blended together. Like, you start off the book and you feel like you're reading a pretty typical dystopian science fiction page-turner. And, like, of course, the patriarchy bad, which I think that's another thing. This is, like, very, like, megaphone patriarchy bad, which is, like, obviously, I agree. Like, I agree the patriarchy's bad. But, like, it was excessively told to me over and over and over again. So I was just kind of like, okay, can we use our words for other things? Or, like, I think this book would have worked really well for me if it was, like, 300 pages and not 400 pages. That sort of thing. I don't know. And I was also really disappointed because I've read her short stories. I love them. They're so experimental and raw and uncomfortable. And, like, I kind of went into this expecting that, especially because it's a horror. And this is, like, personally the least horrifying thing she's written compared to the short stories I've read. So I don't know. I would think I was a combination of disappointed and bored. But there are people who really like it, and you should listen to them and not me. All right, we got 3 more. The Parking Lot Attendant. I gave this 3 stars. It has 3.17. My book club was generally underwhelmed. I think at most we gave it a 3-star average rating. It even took place in Boston. Like, we were in the bookstore across the street from the movie theater that is mentioned in the book. So, like, I don't know. But we are not, my book club, we are not Nigerian American. This is about Nigerian, I think it's Nigerian American experience. I guess I should look. I don't think it's Ethiopian. It's one or the other, but I cannot tell. No, it's Ethiopian. I am sorry. So, it's Ethiopian experience in Boston. And I think what I liked was when it was grounded in Boston. And what I didn't like is there was this weird island part. And the island part was weird. There was a lot of suspension of disbelief to connect the island part to the Boston part. So that was odd. And I think that's just why I never could, like, give it more than 3 stars. I was just like, I don't know what we're doing. I guess it's okay. Like, I don't know. I was just very confused. And I think everyone else was just equally like, I guess that's fine. So obviously 3.17, other people had a lot more disconnects. All right, and these last 2 are a crime to me. And they are Karen Lord books. 3.00 for the Blue Beautiful World and a 3.07 for the Galaxy game, which just makes me sad. Like, I do get why it wouldn't be 5 stars for people. This I understand. Especially because the Galaxy game is very narratively challenging. I really like it for that. I've read it twice. But yeah, it's not going to hold your hand. It doesn't have traditional character development because it's more focused on community development. So your main character is more of a community and a place than it is a character. But the world building's fascinating. Instead of reading, people do everything audio, which makes sense because there's a lot of auditory cultures. And, like, I guess, for example, my family in Venezuela, all they do are voice notes. And they'll do it around other people, which is always very weird to me. Like, if I do voice notes, I feel like I have to be in a private setting. But it's like, it made sense that, like, all of the information was auditory, which, like, if you don't know this, the part of your brain that processes auditory and visual is, like, the same part. I think it's in your temporal lobe. But regardless, I thought the world building was fascinating. The question of there's this power vacuum. How does it get filled? And, like, kind of having some characters around this big moment. And then the first contact with alien stories being the Blue Beautiful World, I thought that was really interesting and how it tied into the importance of pop culture, which we know pop culture is incredibly important. And so, like, and that one's even more narratively straightforward. So I have to believe that there's just maybe not a lot of ratings for this. I guess I could look. How many ratings are there for the Blue Beautiful World right now? Let's see. Yeah, it's like 608. Like, I gave it 4 stars. And overwhelmingly, the average is 3. So it's not like people are quote-unquote hating it, although there are more 2 stars than 4 stars and things like that. I don't know. I just, like, I feel, again, it's one of those, we get, like, if you notice this, a lot of these books on the bottom of my list are by people of color. And sometimes international people. And I wonder, like, do we truly just not give the same patience and grace to these creators that we do white people? Like, let's I didn't even do the stats on that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm not even going to include, like, trans identity or anything like that. 9. That's international. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. So 15 of the 20 books in my bottom on Goodreads are by authors of color. Or international authors. And then if I add 2 others for trans identities, it's 17. So, I don't know. It kind of just feels like damning evidence that people aren't really patient, and maybe including myself. Like, I agreed with a lot of those ratings. But also, I feel like sometimes I give something 3 stars on Goodreads and it still has like a 3.7. Like, to get below a 3.5 usually means there's more 2 stars than not. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that I'm correct in my assumption, or you just think sometimes a bad book's a bad book? It doesn't matter who wrote it. But I do think sometimes, we all bring baggage to art. We're more comfortable with some tropes than we are others. We're more forgiving about some things than we are others, especially if we like understand them and can bring our own bias. I can't tell you the number of times I've buddy read a book and I'm like, I don't get this character, and my best friends are like, no, they're totally like blah, 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 because they were adding in their own experiences, which is what you're supposed to do when you read. Reading is like a retranslation of someone's work. You're bringing it to life. So maybe we're just not as good at bringing things to life if they aren't our own experiences, which makes sense. But is that okay completely to I don't know. It feels weird. I didn't even know that when I was doing this project. So cool. Nah, the world's a mess. If you just want to leave an emoji though, just let me know you're here. Leave a world for the Blue Beautiful World because it deserves better. It truly does. And otherwise, if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.